Hey, how's it going everybody, and welcome to Prop Circles 2. This video is going to be on some Inav, just some setups for your Dolphin Pro. Some people had some issues of like what to change, what not to change. Pretty much just going to go over some basic information. This will also pertain to other planes that you set up, not just the Dolphin Pro. You definitely wanted to do all your, in one of my videos I told you about leveling all your control surfaces and everything, and manual mode, and you want to make sure all your control surfaces are level before we proceed onto this iNav, I guess you would say, tutorial. I'm not going to get too deep into it because there's a lot of information for iNav, and especially to go through and to switch back and forth from your transmitter to your plane into the iNav software. So this is probably just going to be like a crash course into iNav itself. All the configurators, there's just different features in different ones. This is 7.1 because I'm using 7.11 on my Dolphin Pro. So let's get right into it. I don't want to talk too much, and definitely welcome to my channel. And if you aren't subscribed, definitely hit the subscribe button. So anyway, here we go, guys. So first thing you do is you're going to plug your plane in to your computer. You're going to hit connect. The first screen you're going to see is your setup screen. This is going to show you your heading, your pitch, and your roll. It's going to show you if you hold your plane level. It's going to show you on the pitch how much pitch you have. So I can bring it to 0. That's 0 pitch right there. So you can see that the plane would be flying level if the pitch was at 0. You can also hit your reset Z axis, and that will put your plane back the other direction so you can see it from behind, but we're not going to do that. I'm going to show you here my level of my plane. As you can see, it's in minus right now. That's at 0 degree. And if you nose down, your plane should nose down. You pull back, your plane should go back. You tilt left, it's going to go left, and tilt right, it's going to go right. That's pretty much showing you that your flight controller is installed in your plane correctly and it's going in the right direction. And if it is not, either you have your flight controller backwards or upside down. And if that is not the case, you will have to go to your alignment tool, which is down here, and realign your flight controller. And I'm not going to get into that. You should just be putting your flight controller in correctly into the plane itself. And that goes with all planes the same way, how you set it up. Next one, we're going to go to calibration. I usually put my flight controller in my planes before I calibrate my flight controller. Other people do it out of their plane so they can get it nice and perfectly level. I like to put it in my plane and see about where it's at, and if there's any, like the nose is down too far or up too far, I kind of just like level the plane out like it would be flying and look at my flight controller, and then I would hit save on the first step because that's going to be your level. And then you just go by what each step says, upside down level, and then side to side, and then up and then down. And then once you're done with that, you want to hit save. And that is to calibrate your accelerometer. Okay, so next what we're going to do is we're going to go right to the mixer. Make sure you save that too when you're done. Next we're going to go to the mixer. So in the mixer you'll see your platform configuration. It should be selected as airplane. Like I said, we're doing the Dolphin Pro. We're not doing any other airplane. Your normal motor direction and prop configuration. Okay, in your mixer presets, if you went and flashed the software and you flashed it incorrectly, you're going to go load and apply, and then you're going to select airplane VTail. If it was some other type of airplane, you would select the same way, but we're doing airplane VTail. And then once you hit load and apply, it's going to automatically load and apply, and it should look exactly like this. So when setting it up on the flight controller, S1, S3, S4, S5, and S6, that's the way it should be set up on your flight controller. Those are your servo, which line they should be in: S3, S4, S5, and S6, and S1. I had a brain fart there for a second. Um, I don't mess. You don't mess with any about the timer outputs. They're always set on auto. This is just showing your auto mapping. S1 is your motor 1. There is no other motor. And then S3, S4, S5, and S6, those are your servo outputs. As you can see, it says servo on there. You don't touch any of that stuff. That's pretty much just telling you what it is. So your motor mixer is just showing there's only one motor. There's no yaw, no pitch when on, so it's just basic throttle. Like if you had dual motors, you would be on yaw. You can do yaw. The motors would yaw for you. Like one would go faster on left and slower on right, and faster on right, and so vice versa. So we're not going to get into that. We're setting up the Dolphin. So like I said, Inav goes on forever. We can be here for hours. So right down here on the bottom, your servo mixer. As you can see, they all say stabilized besides my yaw. Yours will say stabilized on all of them. I do not use any stabilized on my yaw at all. So if you wanted to change that, you just click on the down arrow and you select RC yaw on both your yaw channels and then hit save and reboot. If you do that, your servos are going to go in a different direction. Your pitch might be up or it might be down. You definitely want to check all your control surfaces and make sure they're going in the right direction after you change your stabilized, because in stabilized Inav changes which direction the servos go in. So once you change it from stabilized to RC yaw, it will change it again. So you definitely want to check that. And then when you're all done with that, you're going to hit save and reboot. If you look here, I'm just going to give you a little bit of information. Like my roll is at 100% weight, and then the rest are at 50. The minus 50 means this is reversed. So these are not reversed, but this one is reversed. So by putting minus 50, that reverses the servo, which, like if the pitch was going up, I would reverse the one servo and to minus 50 and one would go down. So that's how you would reverse that, the throws. Next we're going to go to outputs. Enable motor and servo output, that should be on. Your ESC protocol mine's on standard. There's other ESCs out there that are D-shot. This is just a standard 50 amp ESC I have in here. It's not an Atomrc ESC. I'm just using basic standard. I mean, I probably could use D-shot like 150 or 300, but I'm not using it. I have no problems. Servo refresh rate. I'm using an analog servo. I'm not using digital, so mine's at 50 hertz. If yours was digital, my max would be 100 hertz. That's what I would set it at. That would be my recommendation. You don't want 160 or 330. It should just be 100 hertz for digital. Stop motors on low throttle. Yes, you definitely want that. So if you're landing and you're at low throttle, you want the motors to stop. Motors. This is to test the motor direction. This is definitely important. You do not want your motor going in counterclockwise. It should be going clockwise. So by checking that, you hit I understand, make sure your prop is off, then you can push up the throttle on master and it will automatically turn the motor on. That's with a battery plugged in. You should still have a battery plugged in anyway when checking the servos. The servos will not work without a battery being plugged into the plane. So you should already have the battery plugged in. If you do hit I understand the risks, please make sure your propeller's off. It will tear you up. Once you're done testing the motor, if your motor is going the opposite direction, you just flip two of the wires on the motor and it should be going in the other direction for you. There's no sense of reversing the motor or going to Blue Jay and reversing or anything like that. You just switch two of the wires and it'll go in the correct direction. Okay, so next is your servos. Okay, if you look at all the servos here, 1, 2, 3, and 4, down here, see it says servos 1, 2, 3, and 4, you'll see S3, S4, S5, and S6. Like the picture showed in the other one, the mixer, your S3 was red, your S4 was green, your S5 was orange, your S6 was blue. So these are all your servos. So if you wanted to fine-tune the servos, you can change these numbers either greater or less than, and fine-tune the servos so they're nice and flat. And you hit save when you're done doing them, because if you do not, they will not save. You can see my rates on servo 1 and 2. That's for my roll is at 70. They are usually standard at 100. Mine's at 70. I don't need that much roll. You don't need 100 for the rate for roll. You can even change these if you wanted to on your tail, but they keep them at 100. I do not change them. This is if my servos needed to be reversed. If they were going in the wrong direction, this is where you would reverse your servos. And then also in your mixer is the same thing. If they're not going in the right direction, you're going to have to go back to your mixer and change what I told you, the minus 50 or regular 50. And that's going to put your servos in the reverse also. Sounds kind of confusing, but there's also enable live mode. You can do that too. I don't run that. So that's pretty much on that. And definitely make sure you hit save. So next we're going to go to ports. This should be something that you learn very well with Inav. This is all your stuff hooked to your flight controller. You should have a little manual, or if you don't have one, go online, find a manual for your flight controller to find out what your receiver plugs into, what your VTX plugs into, and what your GPS plugs into. As you can see, my UART1 is my RX, my UART3 is my GPS. UART5 is my MSP display port. Yours might be different. As you can see, there's a lot of them to choose from. Mine is DJI 03, so that's what mine's selected on. When you're done with that, you hit save and reboot. Configurator. I usually don't mess with a lot of things in here on a configurator. Pretty much, basically, it's all set up for you. I don't mess around with the sensor and the buses at all. The voltage and current sensor, I don't mess with that. Sometimes I mess around with my battery settings. It's pretty much explanatory. Everything that's in yellow, you can change. Your minimum cell voltage, maximum cell voltage, warning cell voltage, you can change that, whatever you like. Your battery capacity, I have mine set at auto for the cell count. You can change all that. A lot of times I do change that, but I've been doing a lot of tuning with the plane, so I really don't mess around with that. I usually fly for 5-10 minutes when I'm tuning a plane. Other features. This is what I have on you, and over here on the little question mark, it tells you everything about each one. So the GPS for navigation and telemetry, that one has to be on for return to home. Telemetry output, definitely want that one to tell you on your screen what's going on. Enable motor and servo output. That is output for your motor and your servo. If that's not on, you're not going to have neither. OSD, same thing with that, it's on. Permanently enable air mode, that is always on. Permanently enable launch mode for fixed wings. Mine is always on. I never have a problem with auto launch. Mine is always on auto launch. As soon as I pick up my plane, I hit my button to arm it, and then we're ready to auto launch. Profile selection with TX stick commands, that's always on for me. You can pull both sticks down left and to the right corner, and you can save when you're done flying. If you're doing an auto trim and stuff like that, you have to save on those. So that's why I leave my stick commands. You can also look up your PIDs, so on and so forth. Continuous trim servos on fixed wings. I always have that on. It's constantly trimming my servos as flying. When I talk about the yaw, it was on stabilized. When you're in cruise or you're in return to home or you're in loiter, it's constantly correcting your yaw. I do not like that. I like my yaw at center and level. And so when I want to dive quickly or turn quickly, I have full throws and I have nothing stabilizing my yaw. My yaw works perfect that way. That's the way I do all my planes. No stabilization on yaw, even on regular planes with a regular tail. That's pretty much it on that, guys. I don't mess with my VTX down here. You save and reboot. Fail safe. You don't want to drop or land. I do return to home. And that's the delay for return to home. And if that's not selected, hit save and reboot. PID tuning. I found this out a long time ago with the Dolphin. um, how to get out the porpoising out of the plane. Um, when I first started flying it, I kind of was skeptical on the barometer and the altitude sensor on position Z. I started messing around with that on my second throw of my plane and my settings. If you don't have it and you're on 7.1, you want the barometer and sonar and altitude. I think it's barometer and altitude only. The position Z should be 10. The P, I, and D is 5 and 0. Rest of it I left alone. These right here on my PID gains, these are left stock. I did not mess with anything of these. The only thing that does change is your feed forward. That will change on auto tune. Your PIDs do not change on auto tune. They do not change. Your feet forward, your rates, and your expo is the only thing that changes on auto tune. I'm not sure what the stock setting was feed forward, but these are what tuned out on my plane. Yours might be different. If you want more pitch on your first auto tune, I would suggest, I believe this is usually set at 80, I would suggest 125 or 130 feet forward on auto launch. This way it's going to give you more pitch, especially when you're flying, you have more pitch authority. Rates and expo, these change from auto tune. I don't mess with any of that. When I do an auto tune, that's what it gives me. I don't mess with the weight and any of that stuff. Everything is pretty much basically left stock until I do my auto tune. Filters, the same thing. I don't touch any of that stuff. Mechanics. Your big thing here in mechanics is your level trim degrees. On the Dolphin Pro is 4. So when I first set up the Dolphin Pro, when I first got it, which was a couple weeks ago, my level trim, I automatically set it at 4. I knew some way, somehow, the way these wings were designed, that it's going to need reflex. And when I talk about reflex, it's the level trim degree. It's 4. You can put 5. It might give you too much. I went with 4. I might play around with that later down the road. But right now, I just pretty much leave it at 4. That's pretty much it here in your PID tuning. You're going to hit save. Sorry, this video is pretty long, but I kind of want to explain things a little bit better for people to understand. And if you guys have any questions, definitely leave them down below. I'll do my best to answer the questions. I am not no pro at Inav. I've been using Inav for years. I know how to tune my planes. I know what to adjust. So I'm just trying to give everybody pointers and everything like that. If I explain something differently than somebody else, this is just the way I do it. I just want to let you guys know that this is the way I do Inav. Other people might do it differently. So we're now going to get on to advanced tuning. This is very important. Your idle throttle and your launch throttle is going to change with the type of motor that you are running. If you're running a 6S motor, a hot motor, and your plane's really fast, your idle throttle and your launch throttle is going to be different than mine. I'm running a 1300 kV with a 9.4 prop, playing roughly at full throttle, pulling 15 amps, is about 70-75 miles an hour. I need a lot of throttle on takeoff. The Dolphin Pro is heavy, so it needs a lot of throttle. So I set mine at half, which is 1500 for my idle throttle, and almost full throttle when it hits launch. Once I release it out of my hand and it gets tossed, it automatically bumps up to 1900. The reason why I do 15 and 19, the difference in between, is because if I went with like 13 and then I went with 19, it would give me a lot of torque twist, and you would see the plane twist. I could probably even bump this up to 16 and be like 300 away from 19, but this right here works for me. Like I said, if your plane's faster, you got more ass behind the plane, yours might go with like 13 and 17 or 12 and 17. But this is a happy medium for me. My idle throttle delay is 3 seconds this way. As soon as I push arm, it's going to give me 3 seconds. It's going to give me a throttle delay for 3 seconds. So if I'm moving around, trying to move my transmitter, I got 3 second delay, and then I wing it. Max throw angle. If I throw it 180 degrees, it's still going in auto launch. So that I believe was set at 40 or 45. I set mine at 180. Motor delay, I think that's stock. Motor spin up time, I think is stock. I just talked about launch throttle. My climb angle is 22. It's normally 25. This is my launch timeout. Maximum altitude it's going to climb to. And transition time. And I do mess with some of them settings in there, so yours might be different from mine. So if you want to use my settings, you can use them. And I'm going to jump right over to this side. The fixed wing navigation settings. This is for cruise control and return to home and loiter. My cruise control is at 1800 because, like I said, for my plane to really cruise, it's got to be at 1800. If I was at like 15 or 14, I'd be doing like 20, 30 miles an hour. Just going to want to dive because it's fat and heavy. Yours is probably going to change from this. Your max throttle, you never want to go 2000 on this. My minimum throttle, this is my minimum throttle. In any of them modes is 1200. I don't change my pitch to throttle ratio. I leave that all the same. Loiter ratio, 246 is mine set. I believe that is the basic setting, and right is the basic. You could change these to whatever you want to loiter. This is 246 feet. It's loitering, and then it's going in the right direction. And I don't change any of the other settings down here. Landing settings, I don't mess with any of that. Battery, I don't mess with any of that. Return to home settings, you definitely want to change some of this. Return to home altitude, we have a lot of trees here and fly up in the mountain. 164 feet is plenty for me. Some other people might need it higher. Mine's 164, so you can just play around that what you like. And I don't mess with anything down here. The same thing on this side. I don't mess with any of that. And then when you're all said and done, and you're all happy with all that, save and reboot. Programming, there is nothing in there. Receiver, this is where you set up your receiver. So when you're doing your setup in the beginning, and you're doing your ports and everything, and you wanted to see what switches does what, your roll, pitches, yaw, and throttle, and then all your other switches for your modes, you can see them working in here. And to set the receiver up and everything, like I'm using Express LRS, so it's selected on Crossfire and Serial. I don't mess with any of this stuff, the RC smoothing. When you're done with all that, save and reboot. Your modes, these are the modes I have. I use ARM, Nav Cruise, Nav Loiter, Nav Return to Home, Auto Tune, Auto Level, because I'm still tuning my Dolphin. Once I'm done tuning, I take off Auto Level Trim and Auto Tune, and I change that to whatever, whatever things else I want to do, like a manual mode, or I'll end up changing those too. But for right now, I am just still tuning this plane. I mean, it's tuned really good now, but I have a new motor coming in this week. I think it's tomorrow, so I'm going to be trying a new motor, so I'm still going to probably have to do a little bit of auto tuning. Save and reboot when you're done with that. I'm not going to get too much into the modes. Adjustment, you don't do anything in there. GPS. GPS for navigation, telemetry, that should be on. Protocol is U-blocks usually. A ground assistant is not on. This tells you how many satellites you have, your fix for your 3D. If you're in Europe or China, you can use these other ones to get more satellites. Usually GLONASS I can use here in America. I'll usually turn that on and hit save. Your alignment tool in the beginning I was showing you to align your flight controller if it was screwed up or upside down or whatever. You basically would change that here, orientation. This is stock orientation. On your axis, a slider up here, like your axis and your value and your slider. This one here, you should be all zero here. A couple people are having problems with their pitch was at -3. I don't know if that came with the Atom flight controller or not. But that should all be zeroed out. Because if you put 4 pitch on the plane and your pitch is at -3, guess what? You only have +1 pitch. So definitely check that out when you're setting up your plane. And like I said, all this goes for other planes too, how you set up your plane. Just some of my numbers and everything are going to change due to what kind of plane I have. Down here, Same thing. This is all basic, 180, 270. This is the roll is at 0, and like I said, this is going to change which direction of your flight controller is, and you can, like, if it was upside down, like I believe I have the Swordfish, mine's upside down, so this would definitely be different. This would I forget exactly what it is, 180 flip, I believe, for that. Once you're done, if your settings need to be changed in here for your pitch, hit save and reboot. Other than that, you probably don't have to change anything. Mission control I don't use. OSD, I'm not going to get into that. You should pretty much, if you fly planes and you have on-screen display, you set up what you like in your OSD. I set up a lot of things in my OSD. That usually takes a minute to load. Here's my OSD. I'm using 7.1. I use Betaflight HD for my video format, and it shows the grids. This is pretty much what mine looks like. LED strips, I don't use any of those. Sensor, I don't use that. And that's pretty much it, guys. If you have any questions or anything like that, definitely shoot them below. I hope I covered a little bit of stuff that you weren't sure of in Inav. I can do a complete crash course in Inav and be here for a couple hours. I can do from, start to finish by getting a brand new flight controller in and putting it in a plane and setting it all up. I mean, I could do a series on that if somebody wanted to see it, or if I had a lot of people wanting to see that, I can do that. I'm trying to fly a lot of my planes. I have 12 planes total, and I usually have off on the weekends, and they're usually crappy. And during the week, I work not really late, but so far the last couple weeks been really crappy outside, so I really haven't got time to fly. So hopefully this week I'll get some flight time in it and show you guys some more videos. And like I said, guys, thank you very much for watching my videos. Thank you very much for liking them. And love all the comments. Keep them coming if you have any questions. And take care, guys. And oh yeah, if you're interested in anything from Atomrc, in my description, I have an affiliation link down there. And I also have a $10 coupon off of any purchase on Atomrc. So definitely go down there and click the link and put in their $10 coupon so you get $10 off. And I appreciate it, guys. Thank you very much, and take care.